Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to another This Week. And, well, what a week it has been. Hopefully, you all had a fantastic Canada Day yesterday, or as it used to be called, Dominion Day. I believe it was 1982 when it officially became Canada Day. So that's kind of a cool thing. I'm glad to see so many of you already starting to stream in. We will very quickly say hello to a few popal. Do we have any popes in the house? No, people. We'll start with Chad. Hello, Chad. Good day, fellow investors. Jonathan Montgomery says he's ready for this. Awesome. Jay's in nice and early with a hi, everyone. And we got Verena saying hello. We got more hellos from Jonathan. We got the Danters in the house. Happy day after Canada Day. Absolutely. Is that like deportation day because you're no longer in Canada Day? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Jonathan says happy day before. Okay, we got that. Lennon says hello. Hello, Lennon. It is good to see you. It is good to see you, Jill. And hello, Jordan. Good and happy Sunday, Candace. Absolutely. So we got our news coming up as well. I've now been tinkering with the thing on the side. So now we actually got, these are all of our news stories that we're going to cover today. So that way there you guys sort of see what's coming up. And for those of you on the replay, thank you very much as well for watching. I know about 75% of my views come from the replay, so I really appreciate you guys. But if it's a situation where you don't care about the carbon taxes, you can just, oh, I want to know what native building. I'm just going to move ahead a little bit. So I don't have timestamps yet for these guys, but nonetheless, it's just a new little format trying to spice things up a little bit as we move along. So we're going to jump right into our first story here. And this is going to be cool because this is where you're going to actually get a chance to see that this thing actually does stuff. Woo, it turns red. Talk about the high budget, right? This is like Spielberg level YouTube budget, but we're going to go from there. Abalash is in the house. Hello, Abalash. It is good to see you as well. Okay, new carbon taxes. How many of us are completely sick of hearing about these carbon taxes? I am definitely one of them. So there was a carbon tax type thing that happened yesterday. So for July 1st. So it's not your typical carbon tax unless you're in the Maritimes. I think New Brunswick actually did have I think New Brunswick, their carbon tax went from 11 cents to 14.4, something crazy like that. This thing that came into effect yesterday, it's basically called the Clean Fuel Regulations. So it's imposed not on you guys directly at the pump. It's actually imposed on the people who do the gas and diesel refiners. So they're the ones who are paying for this one. But of course, we all know that when the people upstream have to pay a bit more, they're going to pass those prices on downstream. So we can expect seeing some of these prices coming at the pumps. How fast it will happen? Well, it'll probably happen faster than we would like to see happening. So that is definitely something that is coming. Now, the government said, and I guess this is our government being nice, they said they're not going to let it go up by more than 13 cents a liter. Yeah. Wow. It's crazy how much gas is going in. And here's the thing. I think we're in a situation where so much things are increasing, everything from inflation to interest rates, that I'm not saying we don't need a carbon tax. I'm not convinced that we do, but I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying that I think this is a wrong time to be really pumping up those prices, because think about it, with the price of gas going up, and especially when it gets passed on from the refiners, what's going to happen? Obviously, it's going to cost more to ship goods. That's going to then impact inflation. All of a sudden, inflation is not going to look so great, and that's going to increase more rates going up. So that's kind of one of those interesting things. We have to sort of look how this is all going to unfold. But this is a story I think worth watching and worth paying attention to, because it will affect everybody here. I don't think there's a single Canadian out there that won't be affected by it in some way, shape, or form. All right, Bonnie's in the house. Hello, Bonnie. And we got Mr. Red Taco in the house. We got our working bulldog, Mary, in the house. And the friggin' Oracle is in the house, and he's talking about the grocery rebate. So, yes, that grocery rebate is supposed to come out with the next GST. So, if you haven't done your taxes, you're going to have to wait a bit longer because you have to do your taxes to get that rebate. Mr. Red Taco says, well, thanks for that, government. You're so nice. Yeah, the government is very nice. Abalash says, I think even electricity rates will go up with increases in EV vehicles. There's going to be increases, I think, right across the board. And as we bring more and more EV vehicles in, here's the thing with EV vehicles. The technology is still relatively new. When I say new, I mean new, but not, because electric vehicles have been around since the early 1900s in one form or another. What we need is we need to create better efficient batteries, try to use less electricity, and the electricity that we're using to charge these cars, if we really want to save the environment, these need to be green. It needs to be green electricity. So, solar, wind, geothermal, or tides. Tidal electricity, I think, is great. I mean, we've got the largest tides in the world in the Bay of Fundy between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. I would be like going crazy generating power in that area. But at the same time, here's the problem. If you want to set up a new power plant there, the amount of time and the amount of assessments the government's going to make you jump through is absolutely crazy. It'll probably take you 15 years to get a new power plant built in that area. There's way too much red tape when it comes to government. And that's something I think the government really needs to start looking at, because that's affecting our natural resources. And we're not just talking when it comes to, tidal power plants. We're talking about everything from mining right to, sustainable energy. It's all being affected. Wayne says, are they replacing the GST with the carbon tax? Oh, no, you're going to be paying both, my friend. No tax breaks for you. And Mr. Red Taco says, does any me actually see where the carbon tax money goes? That's what I want to see. I want to see the transparency on this. I want to see where all of that money is going. If it is not going towards what it's supposed to be going for, is offsetting carbon and improving the environment, then I think the Liberal government at this, or whoever's in charge at that time, will need to have answers to what's going on. Who qualifies for the grocery rebate? Well, it's based on your GST. So if you are making so much money that you don't get a GST, you're probably not getting the rebate. Let's just put it that way. If you're getting the GST, you're probably getting that rebate. I don't know how it scales, though, so I couldn't tell you if there's any kind of a sliding scale on it. I don't think there should be. And the friggin' Oracle says, and I believe you have to make under 38K to qualify for the groceries. So there we go. So under 38K, that's roughly, I think, where you need to be to get a GST as well. So it all ties into that, because it's actually just being pumped into that GST. So Mr. Red Taco says, let's see. Well, when gas tax goes down, that money needs to be replaced somewhere. Tax EVs, and that's all there is. Yeah, I mean, when all there is EVs, the government will always find a way to tax us. Taxes are one of those things that are certain in life. What is it? Death and taxes are the only two certain things in life. They will find a way. If we all stopped using gas-powered vehicles tomorrow, those taxes are all gone and the government needs their money. They will find something to tax us with. It's just the way that government works. And when you're looking at a Liberal government, because they have more of an emphasis on social side of the equation, that does cost a lot more. So there does tend to be more taxes. But here's the thing, as much as the Conservatives put up a fight against all of these taxes, a lot of times once they do get back into power, they're in that situation where they can't really cut the social stuff because people will put up a big fuss about that. So, I mean, imagine if the Conservatives get in power in 2025 and they say, okay, let's kill that dental care thing. Holy banana bread. That would not go over very well at all at that point. So, it's kind of one of these things it's kind of that cycle. I think it's why we need the two sides of that political spectrum. You got the left coming in, giving us all the social stuff, creating a huge amount of debt. Then you got the right coming in, just trying to get all of that back in order before the left comes in again to do some more social stuff. So it's kind of that seesaw that we get going back and forth. So, all right. And Abalash says if they really wanted to save the environment, they would promote public transportation. EVs will likely heavily pollute the environment. I'm in Southeast Ontario. Smoke from forest fires here sucks. Absolutely. And here's the interesting thing. I'm in Ottawa, so I get the smoke thing. There are actually forest fires completely out of control in Quebec that they're not even fighting right now. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that if you've got an out of control forest fire that's not easy to access, a lot of times they'll just let nature do its own thing. They'll let it run its course because you can't really get the men into it. And even if you do, it's usually in such a dangerous situation that you don't really want to be risking human life. You don't want to drop in a bunch of firefighters in a out of control fire with no way to in and out, no real exit strategies. If that wind changes, well, it's no longer, it's no longer a good situation for them on the ground. So there is that. The other thing too is there's only so many resources, and you also have to prioritize fires that are threatening people. So, and that makes sense. So unfortunately, with that being said, unless we get a lot of rain in Quebec, like a lot of rain, because you take an out of control forest fire, depending on how many hectares it's burning, even a good soaking may not be enough. You need a good prolonged soaking to really start putting the damper on some of these fires. So that's definitely something. Now with EVs, one of the big environmental concerns, of course, is that lithium. So the lithium in the battery, that is horrible for the environment. So that is one of the things, and I think that's something that even Elon has talked about, looking at alternatives to lithium. And I think that will be, hopefully going forward, would be a good way to go, just to sort of not mess up the environment too much. All right. Mary says, that's what I figured. Thanks. And the friggin' Oracle says, it depends on dependence on how much. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, obviously, if you have dependence, that also changes. And we're talking once again to the how much food money you're going to get. So that is definitely. And Mr. Red Taco says, yeah, it's just added to the GST, death and taxes. Absolutely. What will happen to all the dead EV batteries when they die? Pile up in a landfill? Hopefully not. That goes right back to what I was saying about that lithium. We don't want to be throwing lithium into a landfill if we can help it. So either we find a way to effectively recycle those batteries and that lithium, or we need to go to something a lot less toxic to the environment than lithium, for example. Now, as an investor, when they start doing that, if they start finding an alternative to lithium, then you want to start looking at your lithium investments and maybe start thinking about exit strategies and moving to whatever that new mineral is that they're going to be using. So just one of those things to keep in mind. I think right now there's no danger of that happening. Mr. Red Taco says, if the train is too dangerous, they'll let it burn on its own. Yeah, exactly. Chad says, nature always wins. The force is too strong to reckon with. Yeah, nature will always win. And forest fires are a natural part of nature. And, maybe they're a little bit more frequent now because of global warming and climate change, or whatever we want to call it. But they are essential for the health of forests. They do get rid of a lot of that underbrush. And if you ever go to a place that had a forest fire years later, you'll see some incredible green, very healthy stuff starting to pop back up. So it's not that bad, but it's when it starts encroaching on people, and also when we start looking at some of this air quality stuff that we have. And oh my God, Bulldog Lisa, yes, I've been calling you Mary. I don't know why. Yes, I know you're Lisa. Okay. Oh dear. Oops. Chad says, Toyota came out with a hydrogen engine too. Hydrogen is interesting. One of the problems with hydrogen is that it's heavier. When you actually have a tank full of hydrogen, it tends to be a heavier than gasoline, for example. So you are using a bit more energy. And right now there is still a lot of gray hydrogen. Most of the hydrogen that's out there is creating a lot of carbon to make it. Now, the green hydrogen that they're starting to emphasize now is definitely looking really interesting. And really, another interesting thing, CP Rail, so CPKS, they're looking to actually start using a hydrogen locomotive. So, but hopefully they're going to be pulling that from green hydrogen just to keep people happy. I know there's a lot of people who right now are starting to think, well, let's look at green investing. Green investing is fantastic. Wealth Simple, for example, does have an ETF that is completely green. Well, as green as it can be. So it's a green-ish. I mean, you're not going to get a lot of these companies are not going to have absolutely zero carbon footprint. That's going to be kind of a hard thing to do. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But as long as a company, for me, as long as a company is making strides in the right direction. So you look at somebody like Enbridge, for example. Enbridge is moving towards renewable. They have a lot of money put in that. They know that's where the future of energy is going, and they're working on it. That makes me happy as an investor. So, all right. And Chad says most of them fires were arson. That is a really interesting thing, Chad. I was watching a YouTube video, and I don't remember who it was, but they were actually showing Quebec around the time the fire started. And here's the funny thing. The funny thing. I watched it, and there was about maybe 20 fires that all started at the exact same time. And I find that really hard to be a natural occurring thing. But it was just like I was looking at the map, and it was like they all began right at the same time. It's like that is odd. So definitely, I believe some of them are some of them are arson. Some of them are probably, I know, careless people. Smokers flicking butts out the window and things like that. And there's a lot of people that go camping, for example, and they don't properly put out their fire. They're just like, oh well, it's not burning; it's just smoldering now, so it's fine. I can leave it. Well, you got to dump water on it. You got to take a stick. You got to stir it into it to make sure that if there's any embers under the ground, just under the ground, you're getting that water down to that as well. People just don't do that. Unfortunately, that's pretty sad. You don't want to be that person who gets home and realizes, oh my God, I started that fire by mistake. You're probably not going to own up to it because your life would be pretty much mush afterwards. But that would be a horrible feeling, I think. And Mr. Red Taco says forest fires are a part of nature's life cycle. I thought you had it. I did, and I don't know why. Lisa. I had it down packed, and then for some reason today you just became Mary, and I don't know why. But now that I've embarrassed myself by calling you Mary, I will never mess that up again. Abalash says, government needs to provide social security and services, but limit it based on income to get spending under control. Government increased spending adds fuel to inflation. Yes, absolutely. And that's the whole thing. With the pandemic, they had a situation where they were just made it way too easy. There was no checks and bounds. As a matter of fact, the CRA just fired 20 of their own employees because while they were working in the pandemic, those 20 decided to take the CERB as well. They obviously were not entitled to it. And I think that was a situation when they were working there saying, oh, we'll never get around to checking that. Let's just take it. Well, they did get around to checking it. And now those 20 people do not have their cushy government jobs anymore. They're gone. So they do catch you eventually. So that's always one of those things. And Chad says green ticker is biohydrogen form waste and farms. Yeah, biohydrogen or hydrogen from, I know the green hydrogen that Canada's working on is they have one in Newfoundland where they're going to be putting up some wind farms to make green hydrogen. Now that green hydrogen is going to be going to Germany. So they've already got a deal with Germany for that. But it's going to be good. It's all good. All right, that's good. It's good too. And Mr. Red Taco, apparently Lisa and Mary are the same word, but I'm not sure, but maybe they are. We need to look this up. Chad's saying the same thing. Oh dear. Lisa, is your middle name Mary? Because then that would absolve me. So that would be kind of funny. Oh dear. All right. Let's quickly jump into our next story. So we did have our CPI come out this week, which is great. So the annual inflation rate, it has slowed a full percentage point all the way down to 3.4%. That sounds fantastic. However, here's the problem. Food is still way up there at 9.3%. And mortgages as well. Mortgages is flying up there too. Like it's at 29.9%. But that's because it is so, with the rate hikes, that's only going to be going up higher. Now, here's the interesting thing. Because of this, and the fact that we're still not down to that 2% that the Bank of Canada wants, I really think that July we're going to see another 25 basis points coming in. So that means if you guys, any of you guys on a variable rate mortgage, you're going to see more. You're going to see more interest. It's not great. I know last week I mentioned that somebody said the Bank of Canada wanted to hold off at 5%, sort of cut it at 5%, but I don't know. It's hard to say because here's the problem. This gas tax that we were just talking about, the carbon tax, that's going to cause gas to go up. And that's going to cause everything to go up because of all of the extra shipping costs. So we may see a little bit more than we actually want to see. So this is that thing. I would say just pay attention to what's going on when it comes to this. I'll keep you guys up to speed as well. So let's see. So it's Marie. So it's close. Okay. There we go. So Marie, close. I have an aunt who was named Marie. So anyone hold OUSA? I do not. Sammer's in the house. Hello, Sammer. And Chad says, oh yeah, 25 points for sure. We'll never get back to 2%, 3-4% most likely. Yeah, it's going to be hard to get all the way back there. And there has to be a limit to how much pain they want to put on Canadians because, yes, you can. Some people will argue, well, we used to have really high interest rates. That's true. That's true. But the issue is a lot of people got pretty deep in debt during the pandemic because the government implied, they said, you don't have to worry. The rates are staying low for a long time. They never defined long time, though. Little did we know, long time meant, it's not going to be very long at all. And, people are going to be in a situation where, and here's the thing, all the people who did take fixed rates, there's some people out there right now that have fantastic mortgage rates because they took a nice, great fixed rate when it was at bottom. But once those rates, end, whether they took a 5-year, so if they took a 5-year in a couple of years, they're in that situation where all of a sudden their great rate is going to become a nightmare rate for them, especially if they could only just afford the great rate. So we're in a situation, I think, where the banks are kind of, and this is when people ask me, are the banks finally recovering? And I'm like, well, they're gonna recover a little bit, but once all of those fixed mortgages come due, and once we start seeing people defaulting like crazy, that's going to hurt their bottom line. Now, they are prepared somewhat for this. They are putting money aside. They are holding back more than normal, and some of the regulatory boards are making them hold back more than normal. And if I had a bank, so let's say if I owned the Bank in Nova Scotia, if I had controlling interest or something, I would be like, let's really look at what's going on. Let's actually look and sort of get an analysis of how many of our people could be in trouble. So when I say our people, with our more people who have mortgages with us who are on those fixed rates at the moment, and let's start making sure we have that money to survive that bump when it happens, because it is going to happen. So be prepared for it. And any banks that take the extra couple steps, those are going to be the ones I think that survive better than everyone else. Okay, and Mr. Red Taco says Alberta is $1.40 a liter and BC is almost $1.90. Holy banana bread, that's insane. And those numbers are going up, folks. That's not great. 155 in Saskatchewan average. Wow. Abby Losh says, I bought DGS. It is risky to get into split stocks that I have low unit NAV to give dividend. Split, once the market, this is the way I sort of look at the split core stocks, is when the market's doing better, they can be some fantastic passive income. But for the most part, I tend to get out of them when the market is not doing so great. So in bear markets, in the bear market, I only actually held, I think, two, BK, which is a bank one, and ENS, which is the one that does Enbridge. So those are the only two that I had stayed in. But when this market starts turning around and we no longer are fearing that bottom, I'll start looking at adding a few more in there just because that passive income can sometimes be very hard to turn down. Mr. Red Taco says a long time could be a week, but the government isn't going to tell us that. No, that's the thing. When they use words that are not specific, you gotta take them with a grain of salt. That's just the way politicians are. So too much default and debt will kill the banks, especially CIBC, BNS. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Abalash asks, is day trading allowed in the RRSP? Would selling a stock in a week create issues with the CRA? No, it won't. And I'll tell you why. So when you're looking at your RRSP, that money has not been taxed yet. So they don't care what you do in there, because even if you day trade in your RRSP, once you eventually pull that money out, it becomes income, 100% taxable income. So that's why they allow it in the RRSP. The TFSA is a completely different beast because you pull it out and there's no, anything you're gaining inside of your TFSA is not taxed. So they don't get a piece of that pie. But with the RRSP, they get every bit of that pie. They get the entire thing. So if anything, if you day trade and make a bunch of money in your RRSP, when you're pulling it out, they're going, thank you. We'll take those taxes, please. Thank you for those taxes. And even with the TFSA, if you day trade in it and you get caught, they just simply make you pay taxes. It's not like you're going to go to jail for it. They'll just give you a nice big tax bill. That's what happens when you get caught doing that within your TFSA. And Chad says, we'll see it in December. More pain for the banks. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe you can day trade. Yes, absolutely. And we just sort of verified that. Sammer says, hi, Candace. Any thoughts about TXN, microchips, U.S. economy, specifically with all this tension in Taiwan? It's a really interesting thing right now with the chip market. I've been kind of sort of sitting back. If I'm going to put any money into chips, I'm going to stick with the big boys for now, only for the simple reason that there's a lot of tension currently going on over in Taiwan, and anything coming out of China, that's one of those situations where we're not doing that much. Now Taiwan Semiconductor, for example, they haven't been doing that well recently. And with the whole AI bubble, it seems to be a lot of the American companies like NVIDIA did really well. Now they're sort of coming back down. But and I said this, I think I said this, I don't know if I said this on this one or if I said it on Brandon Beavis's, we did a live stream on Tuesday with Brandon Beavis. One of the things I would do when it comes to microchips and AI is, instead of trying to get lucky and figure out which one it's going to be, I would look at ETFs that sort of cover the whole basis. So that's what I did earlier in the year. I started moving into my QQCC position. I got that up to almost 5%, which is where I like to have my positions. And that's only because then I don't have to worry which one of those tech companies is going to take off because of AI. I've got it covered. And those managers at QQCC, if they see one that's not taking off with, they can just get rid of that and they can bring somebody in who is taking off. So it's just one of those things that when you have a bubble like that, and some companies are going to do well, some companies are probably not going to survive. ETFs can be amazing for that, just to try to give you that leverage where you don't have to guess. And when you don't have to guess, that is a good thing, because then you're going to probably make money no matter what happens, which is great. Yeah, exactly. They get you when the RRS goes to a RIF. I had this talk last week with Candace. Yes, we did. I knew I talked to somebody about it. Isn't day trading would be classed as taxable income? Well, yes, day trading, it's taxed as business income, which makes it 100%. But guess what? In your RRSP, there's no capital gains. There's no, everything's 100%. Everything you grow in an RRSP is 100% taxable income when you pull it out. Simple as that. So you don't need any rules whatsoever. You already got the worst case scenario for all of that money when you're pulling it out, 100% taxable. Simple as that. And okay, so it's hard to achieve $1,000 in passive income per month. Yes, it is. You're not going to do that easily. Now, it's one of these things. You have to sort of look at, do you want the passive income or do you just want the money? If you're just looking for the money, you'll have a better chance going with, of course, total return stocks. Look for stocks that give you a half decent dividend, but are also growing quite a bit, because with them, you can get a bit more money into the game. But if you are looking that you just want that passive income, you don't really care about the capital. It's like, who cares what happens to the capital? This is just for me, money coming out. There are ways you can stack it up to sort of maximize that. But to get to $1,000 a month, you're going to need a sizable investment to get there. You can grow yourself there. Like right now, I mean, now I'm not in my investment portfolio, I am not 100% geared towards passive income. I have a good amount of passive income. I'm pulling in about just shy of 500 a month, and that's on an $84,000 portfolio. But here's the thing, you could sort of say, oh, well, you'd need at least 160,000 portfolio to do that. Maybe, but you might be able to do it in a little bit less. You might be able to pull it off with 150,000, provided you're in a situation where you are looking at the higher dividend companies. You're looking at the higher dividend covered calls and pulling in all of that extra income. But the sacrifice is that you have to sort of pay attention to the capital. In a bull market, it's fine. That capital shouldn't go down too much. But you also want to make sure too that when you're doing something like that, you structure anything that has something called return on capital. If they make up the rest of their dividends by basically lowering your average cost base, you want to make sure that's in a registered account so it doesn't affect you. Because if you have that in your regular account and then you decide to sell it, all of a sudden you may be paying more capital gains than what you would have if they weren't using return on capital. All right. Chad says, hard to day trade in an RRSP if you max it out yearly. Can't put more funds in there. And you go over, I believe, in 1% in CRA fees. Keep in mind, you can't put more money in, but the money that's already in there, you can day trade with that money and you can grow it as big as you want. There's no limit to how big you can grow it. And it's the same thing with your TFSA. Your TFSA, though you can't day trade, you can do very long swing trades. The rule basically in your TFSA is as long as if you sell an asset, don't buy it back within 30 days. Make sure that it's beyond that 30 days before you buy back in. Otherwise, that will get flagged as day trading. So you can move things around. And I'm always rebalancing my TFSA. Like if I see a good opportunity and I've got a bit of a bummer, I may move some of the stuff out of that bummer, move it over to the better opportunity, because you want to grow that whole thing. And the beautiful thing with the TFSA is if you pull, let's say you grew, let's say you had, we'll say you have a 70,000 contribution limit. You grew it to 100,000, and then you wanted to buy a house or something. So you pulled the whole 100,000 out of your TFSA. Well, at that point, your TFSA has zero contribution room. But as soon as January 1st hits, you get that entire 100,000 back. Plus, if they give you an additional 6,500, all of a sudden you've got 106,500 as your contribution room, and you can fill that back up. So that's kind of that neat little thing with that. Now, here's a thought that I had, because we got some bigger expenses coming at us later this year. So I'm probably going to have to dip into that TFSA. So by the end of the year, one of my goals, I think, is to completely empty my TFSA. And I would love to go into January with a zero on the TFSA and build it up from scratch and let you guys watch that, how I would build it from absolute scratch. So anyway, look forward to that towards the end of the year. We're still kind of talking about that behind the scenes. So we'll have to look and see how that goes. And Chad is green in TSM, a Taiwan, I think TSM. All right. Happy Camper, you are very knowledgeable. What is your financial background? Actually, my background is just a regular wall, a puzzle. Got some pops up there. Anyway, actually, that was kidding. So Happy Camper. My background is actually science. I did a double major in university in biology and chemistry, so I know a hell of a lot about science. I'm also one of these people that I'm constantly learning. So after I did university, I worked in a lab for a bit. Then I was like, I don't want to do this. I went and I did some management. Then I went into training, and I did a lot of adult training for quite a while. Like a lot of times, I'd be given brand new topics that I knew nothing about, and I'd have to learn them really, really fast. Eventually I ran into finance, and I was just like, oh, you know what? I need to really start investing. And I need to, if I'm going to do finance, I better learn it. So I did a lot of reading, a lot of research, and I absorb information really, really, really fast. So that is it. It is self-taught. Now I have read the course books for the securities thing. I never went through and did the exam, but I've read all the books just to get all of that information down. And I am constantly learning, because a lot of times brand new things are popping up constantly. And and this is one of the things I love. I love when somebody in chat asks me something and I do not know, and I have to say those things I sometimes say. I'm saying, like, I don't know that. I will find out though. Ask me again next week. Then I'm off researching it, figuring things out. So that's kind of the way I pull things together. But I'm really good at taking complex informations, and this is my strength. This is the strength of the channel, is that I can take some pretty darn complex things and I can simplify them down to make them easier to understand for a lot of different people. And that's that training background coming in. So it really helps, I think, pull things together like that. And I'm also really good at finding information. So if I don't know something, I can find it, and I know the people who I can ask when if I do run into something, I have no clue what I should be doing about it. So all of that pulls together. That's kind of the whole where that knowledgeable comes from. But I love it. It's actually a really good thing, and it's become a bit of a passion. And when something becomes a passion, it's very easy to learn about it. All right. And Chad says, "I like that picture in the background. That's Star Wars." It is. It's a 2,000 piece puzzle. I decided to remove stress from my life. I was going to do a puzzle, and I was like, well, where do I put it? I'll just throw it up there, because I said that I was going to do that puzzle. So I did it. Okay, I was going to ask you about time frame. 30 days. Nice. Always learning. I love your channel. Thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. Mr. Red Taco says, so if you filed a tax return for 2021 and already get GST, HST, you'll get the grocery rebate. Well, for 2022, because we're in 2023 now. So yeah, as long as you do the 2023 tax return, you will get that. And Chad says, knowledge equals power, which equals money, which equals financial freedom. Absolutely. Nothing wrong about that. Cash flow model video. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it sooner than later. Like it will be done before the end of the summer. That I can guarantee you. I know tomorrow's video is something on cash ETF. So we got that, but it's getting up there, and Jill's been bugging me about it. So, and I know that there's at least one of you guys out there waiting for it. So it is on my list. It's on my short list right now. So households that make 38K get the rebate, and 32K if you're single. Yeah, if you go into the CRA, it'll show you everything. Well, it might show you everything. It's hard to say because it only recently got passed. But let me take a look here. If there are any day traders here, have you read Brian Shannon's new book, Maximum Trading Gains with Anchored VWAP? I have not read that personally, so that's an interesting book. If there is any day traders out here and you've read that book, let Wayne know. I think you might be trying to find out if it's a good book, maybe. Like maybe Wayne hasn't read it. Maybe. Wayne, let us know. Why you want to know about that book? All right. Now, we had so much talk going on. We got a lot of news still to do. So let's move to that next one. Native building. So what the banana bread am I talking about with that? So as we all know, there is a housing shortage in Canada. And it's estimated that we basically need to build about 3.5 million new homes by 2030. That's great. The only problem is there's so much regulation and so much red tape that it's hard to get it's going to be hard to hit these numbers. Well, in steps some native folk. So in BC, the Squamish First Nation, they're actually looking to take about 350 acres of reserve land to build housing on. Now, of that 350 acres, roughly half of it's in Metro Vancouver. So this is great for people, at least on the West Coast. Here's the beautiful thing. Because it's reserve land, they don't have to jump through a lot of the hoops that everybody else has to jump through. So they can actually get this land taken care of. They can get it made, which is great. Now, there's also the Musqueam and the Squamish as well, again, and the Tsleil-Waututh. They have another development proposal to build roughly 13,000 new homes. And here's the beautiful thing, and this amazed me. So just 10.5 acres, they can build rental apartments for about 10,000 people. Now, this helps. Well, it helps people because all of a sudden there's homes that people can rent. And this, of course, helps as well some of our native folk, because that's a lot of great income coming into their system. Because if they're doing it as rental properties, like it would still be, they would still own that land, but they're renting out all of these houses, and that's not too bad. So hopefully some of the native folk right across the country who are in similar situations might say, hey, if they can do it in BC, we can do it in Ontario, or we can do it in Nova Scotia. That would be kind of a great way to at least see a bit more stuff popping up. All right, Wayne says, hedge funds versus VWAP to enter and exit positions. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can enter and exit. Now, when I was doing day trade, I was doing mostly hedging. So I was getting in and out pretty darn fast. So normally, the way I was, now here's the thing, most day traders don't have that luxury because it depends on how much you're able to actually put into a single trade. So if you don't have the funds, scalping can be a little bit more difficulty. But when you do have a good amount of funds, you can get in, and just having it go up a couple pennies and then getting out, you can still make a nice little chunk and just keep on doing that rinse and repeating through the day to try to get your money up. Now, at this point, I'm doing swing training, so my training is a lot longer, but, and I'm actually thinking about doing another swing trade video as well, because I think that would be kind of a lot of fun, and we'll sort of break down how I do. Now, most of my swing trading, I'm basically using my resistances just to get general plots of directions that stocks are going to go into, and more or less, if I can find a stock in a channel, I'm in heaven, because then I can play it up and down for a while, which is fantastic. And Ciso99 says, hi, Candace, it's been a while. I just fired TD and hired Nesbitt Burns, way better EMRs and better management, in my opinion. Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad that you are happy with your new team, which is better. I've never had any real experience with TD, so I couldn't tell you how much that is, how well or how badly they do. But here's the thing. Sometimes, even with TD, I imagine sometimes it's just who you're working with. You can get a team that is just absolutely horrible, or you can get a financial advisor that is absolutely the worst. And you can also get there are financial advisors out there that are absolutely fantastic. So sometimes you just have to play around and find one that is working in your avenue. Let's see. What would be a good amount of funds? Well, if you're day trading, obviously the amount of funds you're going to trade is you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So when I say that you have a good amount of funds, it's not a situation where you're taking 100% of your funds and putting it all on one stock and hoping, it's like, oh gosh, it went up 5 cents. I'm in luck. Because if that one goes down 10, 15 cents, you could be in a pretty big hole. So normally you're spreading it out. Some people would like to take whatever their total fund is and maybe split it between 10 companies. I never went all the way up to 10. I usually was playing 4 to 5 personally, but you can, depending on how much safety you want. And here's the thing. If you're brand new to something like day trading, play with fake money initially. Till you get yourself used to it, because otherwise you're looking at losing a lot of money and in the learning curve, and there is a steep learning curve. I've seen days where I've lost a crap load of money, and I've seen days where I've made a crap load of money. Um, and most of the time I was trying to be as conservative as possible because I don't like losing money. But day swing trading, I find a little bit better because with swing trading, you have a lot more patience. So a lot of times you can put in your trade, and if it goes down right away, that's fine as long as it stays within your channel. Um, you can usually have a bit more patience to sort of sit back and wait and let things happen, which is kind of nice, which is a lot less stressful too. Um, all right. Let's see. Do you have a top 5 longest paying dividend paying companies in Canada? No, I don't have a top 5 longest. Now, which is really interesting. That would be I don't even know if I have a way to find that. The closest I can come to that are like our dividend aristocrats. So the dividend aristocrats, basically to be an aristocrat, you need to, first of all, in Canada anyway, in Canada, you need to have 5 years in a row where your dividend has increased every year. Now, I think there are a couple of little exceptions where if you did 4 out of the 5 years, they'll still hold you in there. Um, but if you get to the point where you've done 50 years, you've increased your dividend 50 years in a row, you can become a dividend king. So in Canada, for instance, the one dividend king we have is CU, so Canadian Utilities. Now at 49, we have Fortis. So Fortis, within a year, will be a dividend king. And there are lots of lists, definitely lists out there. I've done a couple actually. Aristocrat. So if you look up on the site, if you just look up Aristocrat on YouTube, on my channel, you'll find a couple of different videos on it. So, but yeah, I'll find a link to the Dividend Aristocrats, and I'll throw that over on the Facebook group later. So if you're not a member of the Facebook group, it's just Mountain Finance over on Facebook groups. It's a private group. I usually see people almost as soon as they actually apply, hopefully, or usually worst case scenario, you might have to wait a couple hours if I'm downstairs eating supper or something like that. Hey, what are you doing? Here's the kitten, by the way. She just came to say hi. All right, you can sit there, kitten, for the moment. This is where viewership goes up. Say hi, kitten. Yeah, so I'll put that up. I'll put a link there for that list so that you guys can check that out. So they're kind of cool. There's also there is an ETF that does the aristocrats. It's called CDZ. Now, I did just get out of it recently, out of my RRSP, but that's only because I wanted to put some more. I wanted to open a position in BAM because I got out of my BAM a while back, but I wanted to get back into a BAM. Look at this kitty. Mr. Red Taco says meow, meow. So this kitten is brand new. She's brand new. Well, she's not super brand new. We got her rescued, but she's definitely super cute. And this is her first appearance on the channel. So I didn't even know she was in the room until all of a sudden she ran up my leg and said hi. All right, we're getting really far behind on our news today. So let's quickly grab our next news story. So yes, the US GDP, they had a little bit of a revision. So the US economy in Q1, they originally had reported 1.3% growth. It turns out their newest and latest revision is coming in at 2%. So that is pretty interesting. It means that when you ask that question, how far can a recession be? Well, maybe it's further off than we think because they're still doing good. Like right now, consumer spending is still up there and inventories are getting boosted from a lot of stores just to meet that consumer spending. So as long as that keeps happening, we're going to have a hard time getting ourselves into a recession. So, and Jonathan says, whoops, here we go. Love the BAM video. Brookfield, Bruce, Fiat are my faves. Yeah, I like Brookfield. Brookfield is a really good company. It was one of those situations where I was happy to get back into BAM. I was like, oh, why didn't I get back into it? I hadn't planned to be out of it that long. So, all right, let's move to our next story. Finland's happiness. This is a goofy story, I will admit. Um, so, according to the World Happiness Report for 2023, and it's funny, I saw there was a World Happiness Report for 2023, and I'm thinking, oh, it's got to be Canada. Everybody's happy in Canada. No, it wasn't us. It was Finland. So, Finland was voted as number. No, you can't go over there, Kitty. Finland was voted as number one. Canada actually came in 13th, which I was like, really? But we did beat the U.S. The U.S. came in at 15th. So, that's kind of a neat little thing. And that's kind of where that Finland thing comes up in the title. So definitely interesting. Do you think it's a good idea to hold multiple currencies in your portfolio? Example, US, euros, etc. Here's a good question about that. Now, I hold US stocks. I also hold Canadian stocks. In my swing trading account, I do have a USD account that has US cash in it, as well as the Canadian stuff, only because I think that the more exposure you can get. Now, there's many ways you can get that exposure, though. You don't have to have a US account. You can, if you're, in most brokers, they'll do a quick currency conversion and you can buy US stocks. Initially, what are you doing, Kitty? There. Put you down. There. That way, hopefully the kitty stops getting into trouble. So yeah, with Wealthsimple, they have Wealthsimple Plus. So Wealthsimple Plus costs $10 a month, and that will let you hold an American balance over there. Problem is, and Brandon Beavis actually did a video on this. He broke down exactly how many transactions you had to do to make that even feasible. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, that's right. The math was not in my favor. I wasn't doing enough transactions. So now I've gotten rid of that. I still hold the American, and anytime I buy, like if I buy another share of Microsoft, I just pay that conversion, the currency conversion fee right away at Wealthsimple, and that's fine. So I'm okay with that. Now, with National Bank, for example, they will let you set up an American account. It doesn't cost you anything extra to have American accounts, and you can just move money into that account. It gets converted into American. It sits there. You have an American balance. You can work with that. So you don't have to, but diversification is definitely a good thing. And for me, international now, if I want international diversification, I usually will look at, for example, like an all equity ETF, things like VEQT or XEQT. They have emerging markets, and they usually have good access to the rest of the world. So you do get some exposure that way through that. So there are ways to do it without having to hold all of that extra currency and try to keep track of that. So hopefully that answers your question. +1 for the cat. We like that. eBank, nice little ETF. All right. If we get Liberals, Canada would be number one in happiness. Oh, if we get rid of the Liberals, Canada would be number one in happiness globally. Well, it's hard to say. I mean, we get rid of the Liberals and people on the left will be a little sad. But I think overall, I mean, Canada's not a bad place to live. We pay a lot of taxes, though, for that. But yeah, I'd like to see the country get a little bit. The thing I don't want to see in Canada is I don't want to see us get to that polarization that you have in the United States. Kitten, that's my side that you're digging into. I don't want to see us get into the situation that we have in the States where all of a sudden, if you're on the left, then people on the right think that, you're less than human, and kind of vice versa. We got that huge polarization that happens in the U.S. And I know we've got a few Americans in here and they sort of know about that. And it's a thing. Like if you have a family, there's nothing wrong. Like even in the States, there'd be nothing wrong with having a Republican and a Democrat in the family, or here a conservative and a liberal. Who cares? The idea, though, is if somebody has a different perspective, learn from them. You don't have to adapt you have to adopt their perspective, but learn from them, because I think we all have, when you look at the ideal solution, probably for most things, then you have a situation where it's not going to be the left's answer. It's not going to be the right answer. The real perfect answer is probably somewhere in the middle. If we could just get to a point where the right and the left could actually communicate enough to get to those solutions, that would be fantastic. I don't see that happening in Canada, because if you watch a press conference here, lately, anytime the Conservatives ask the Liberals something, the Conservatives, if they don't want to answer it, they just start talking about the forest fires. And I don't want to say that this is just the Liberals. It works the other way too. I've seen during the last election, I've seen some conservative press conferences where they were kind of ignoring things and just answering whatever they wanted to. And that doesn't work. I don't think that works. As a voter for myself, I don't want to see that on either side of the agenda. All right. And, I like this. So Wayne says you can use Norbit's Gamble to eliminate transaction fees between US and Canadian stocks. You certainly can. If you want to learn how to do Norbit's Gambit, I was going to call it Gamble. Canadian in a T-shirt has a really good video on that and how to do it. I don't use that myself because I don't like to tie up the money, because it does tie up your money in a little bit of time because you are buying some specific stocks. But if you want to know how to do it, just search Norbit's Gambit, Canadian in a T-shirt. It'll come up. He's got a good explanation for it. And Chad says, yeah, Norbit's was looking into it the other day. And Lisa Marie says, yes, the Liberals are ruining things. Oh, dear. Yeah. But, I mean, what can you do? Verona says, nice cat. Yes, and by the way, her name is Hazelnut. Just that way there, you guys know who. There you go. She's actually being really good now and just sort of sitting here, which is really good. All right. Well, let's move to the next piece in here. We don't talk a lot about crypto, but we got a little bit here on a crypto. So right now, Fidelity has now applied for a spot Bitcoin ETF. So a spot Bitcoin ETF is basically an ETF tied directly to the price of Bitcoin. So they use the money that you guys would give them to buy Bitcoin. That's pretty much in a nutshell. Now, 2 weeks ago, BlackRock had also applied for a spot Bitcoin ETF. So there's a lot more excitement right now about Bitcoin. Now, Cathie Wood's ARK Invest, they're actually looking to change their current Bitcoin fund. I think it's an application because they want it to align with BlackRock's model. So here's why BlackRock's model is pretty good. So the SEC, they're actually concerned about transparency in the market, and they think there's a potential for manipulation. So they're worried about manipulation with Bitcoin. Now, BlackRock's filing actually does include something which is called a surveillance sharing agreement. And this agreement would actually alleviate those concerns that the SEC has, which I think is why Cathie Wood's ARK Invest is looking to move theirs more in line with what BlackRock is doing, so that they can allay those fears. Because if you can allay all the fears, then maybe the SEC might look forward. The only problem, though, is that a lot of the Bitcoin right now goes through Binance and Coinbase. And right now, the SEC does not have a very favorable opinion of Binance. So it'll be interesting to watch. But Bitcoin has been doing a little better. And those of you who have stocks that are related to Bitcoin, so things like BTCY, for example, or maybe you're into HUT, things like that, those are going to those may do a little bit of recovering. Last time I looked, Bitcoin was like right above 30,000. So it could be interesting to see. And hopefully those of you who are into crypto can make yourself a little bit of money with that. Let's see. I can agree with that. I think it's about the cat. We'll look bill to ban guns. How that gonna resolve Kron? As gangsters don't have registered guns, so why punish legal gun owners? And then yes to cryptocurrencies for Chad. It's one of those things with gun control. It's one of those things I don't think there's a good way to answer, because a lot of times criminals are using guns that are not legal, and that's not going to change. No matter how much regulation you put on guns, criminals are still going to find ways to get them. But I think this is where the left is sort of thinking. The left is coming in thinking that if you make it harder for people to just have guns in general, then that criminal who breaks into a house won't find a gun because that person couldn't have a gun because it was too hard to get. Maybe that's kind of where they're sort of thinking. And there are certain guns like assault rifles and things like that. It's not that they should be banned outright, but there should be a lot more regulation around them, a lot more safety procedures around them. It's kind of interesting that way. Definitely, you don't want to take away hunting rifles. I mean, people hunt. That's kind of what they do. So you want to make sure that you're not stepping on people's rights, but at the same time, you also don't want safety issues. So, some of the situations where you do have some of these, I don't want to say all of them, but there have been some situations of shootings where it has been legal guns, where, maybe a kid managed to get their hands on their parents' weapon. That's where, more training, better security comes in. There's no way that a child should be able to just get into the gun safe in your house and have access to a gun. So that's where that is, but we'll have to see how that all works out. I do like the idea of when you are changing things with gun control, that you have the amnesty idea where you can just say, okay, if you got illegal guns that you want to turn in, you can turn them in, no questions asked. Fantastic. That's a great way for people to get rid of guns. But then again, I don't know how many people would trust it if you're a criminal and they're like, okay, you can turn in this gun, no questions asked. Would you actually believe the police? It's hard to say. Chad says up 28% in Bitcoin. Yeah. And here, I almost missed this one. Gary Hedsek in USA denied all ETFs. Apparently, he resigned. And our Kathy Wood's a good talker. She does talk a storm, and sometimes you have to sort of look at what she is saying. Because sometimes she gets a little bit too optimistic. Let's see here. David says, do you think the Bank of Nova Scotia is a buy right now? Also, do you think next year they will increase their dividend by double digits? Don't know if they'll go with a double digit increase next year, but I do think they are. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think on the other end of all of this mortgage issue, they're going to rebound. I think all of the big six will rebound. So you're getting really good dividend yields right now, and you're going to get some really good growth in a few years. If you're patient, definitely great buys. So I will not, I'd say that for all the banks though. And BlackRock is doing that for Coinbase. Yes. Let's see. And all the illegal guns are from the USA, and guns are triggered, locked, stored in a safe without ammo. And we're not allowed assault rifles. Are not allowed in Canada, and assault is an action. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm thinking. You see, I don't think guns are really a huge issue in Canada. You take the last massive shooting in Canada, the one in Nova Scotia. I mean that guy, he'd been planning it for years, and he was going to get what he needed, whether it be head down to the States to get stuff or, actually the funny thing is, since we brought this guy up, he impersonated a police officer. So he used a car that used to be a cop car that had been sold. So the RCMP and Canadian police right across Canada have actually started losing a lot of money because of what that guy did. They're no longer allowed to sell their older cars. Before, you used to be able to get them in police auctions and things like that. And apparently they've lost a lot of money because they can't do that anymore, because they don't want people being able to buy, repurposed cop cars because of that type of an incident. And here's the thing. I think that type of an incident is really, really rare. I don't think that it's something that there's a lot of people going around saying, oh, if only I had a repurposed police car so I could pretend to be a police person. But, at the same time, if you're looking at improving public safety, I can't really argue about that. And Lisa says, in my opinion, it's political, pandering to people in the city, trying to make them think the government is keeping them safe, buying votes from big city people. Well, maybe. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's usually people in the country who do a lot more of the hunting. So, yeah, I'm dead against taking away people's hunting rifles. That's just, if you're using a typical hunting rifle and you're out there hunting, and there's no reason that you should ever lose that. Let's see. And he had a gun ban. His pal was denied. So Who did he get? How did he get guns? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, people are still going to, if you're a criminal, you're not going to care about any of these laws. Doesn't matter what laws are passed. You're going to find your way to get what you need. They always have. They always will. See, guns don't kill the idiot behind the idiot behind the gun does. Yeah, that was a thing. If you've ever seen UHF, they did this parody of a commercial, and it was this guy from the NRA. He was looking in the camera with his gun. He was like, he went, "Guns don't kill people. I do," and then making gun hand. And I was just like, "Oh God, that's hilarious." But it's kind of true. I mean, more gun safety, more gun education. Yeah, that's definitely fantastic. All right, let's get to our next story here, number 7, and that is our a wee purse. This is a very quick story. I just wanted to mention it because if you haven't heard about it, it's ridiculous, but it's funny. So a microscopic purse. So this is a purse that's smaller than a grain of salt. It was auctioned for $67,750. The purse is smaller than a single grain of salt, and I have to wonder how precise are purse snatchers, because this is going to be a tough one. But apparently, it's a form of art. It made me think a little bit about NFTs. But I mean, would you guys pay $67,000 for a purse, even if it's just a piece of art that's the size of a grain of sand? I don't know. I don't think I would do that personally. So that's kind of funny. Our next story. So Bill C-18, that's the Online News Act, that has passed. It's got royal assent. We mentioned that last week, and we mentioned that Meta is a little upset about it. Well, now, in addition to Meta, Alphabet Google has now come out, and they said they are going to ban Canadian news, and they're also looking to end some publishing deals with roughly 150 news outlets. So that's a big thing, because this would mean, and this is, it kind of, when I first heard of it last week, I was like, oh, Google doesn't have any ads. So, what are we worried about? I forgot about the fact that they're a search engine. So we're talking about no Canadian news on Facebook or Instagram, and you can't search in Google for Canadian news. I mean, you can search, but you'll find, for example, you might find an American news story that referenced something that happened in Canada, but you won't find the Canadian news stories. So that's kind of big. All of these news people are going to lose, well, they're going to lose a lot of revenue. And this was all supposed to help them gain revenue, but it's kind of having the exact opposite effect. Now, Google did say that even though the bill is passed, we're not going to start blocking this until the law comes into effect. So we're probably looking at about 6 months. But that's kind of it's kind of scary to think about, the fact that it's going to be really hard to get news. Now, what you might be able to do is, if you're not with a Canadian IP, so if you were using a VPN and you wanted to do your searches on Canadian news, I think then you might be able to actually find it. Maybe. Because, yeah, I think as long as you're not in Canada, then, they don't have to pay for that. It's only Canadian. So this is just a really bad bill. Because we're in a situation where online news, like the news people didn't ask for it, at least not in this sense. The Liberals decided that they needed it, and it's having the exact opposite effect of what they want to do. You're looking at rough time for new Canadian news being able to, because the amount of money they make from all of the referrals coming in through, they make a lot of money just from people sharing all that news and all the traffic they get because of Facebook and Google. But now that's all gone. That'll all be gone. So, you're going to see some news. You probably will see some news companies, outlets completely close. As a result of this, you'll see more paywalls because they've got to find a way to make money to pay their employees. This is just not a good bill at all. So I'd be a little bit weary of that. All right. Our next story is we got a Twitter story. So here's the thing. Yesterday, Saturday, Twitter actually came down for a little bit because too many people were making too many queries. They were reading too many tweets. So as a result, Elon has to come up with a temporary fix. And his temporary fix is that he's looking at implementing, and he has done it, Twitter limits. So now the new rule states that if you're a verified user, so you have that blue check mark, Twitter Blue, you're limited to reading 6,000 posts a day. Who would read 6,000 posts a day? That's a lot of posts. But if you're an unverified account, like the rest of us, you're limited to 600 posts a day. Now, here's the thing I don't know. Does that mean that if you write a post, do you then only get 599? And half the time you're just scrolling through and you're not even looking at these posts. So you only get to scroll. Like, I should almost do this. Just continue to scroll and see how long it takes me to hit 600 and see what I get. Now, he did say that these are going to increase as they take care of some of their bandwidth, but we'll have to sort of see. And that's kind of an interesting story. And Mr. Red Taco says, I'd take that buyer's common sense with a grain of salt. Yeah, exactly. Yep, another liberal bill that makes no sense. Yeah, this one doesn't make a lot of sense. And Lisa says, do you think the government and Google will come to a compromise? Not the current government. Trudeau has stated he's not going to bend on this. So, it's going to be interesting. And yeah, look at the Bell layoffs. Yeah, and that was kind of Bell in anticipation of some of the stuff going on with their smaller news chains. So you're going to see a consolidation. You're going to see layoffs, and we have seen layoffs with Bell. So definitely very, very interesting. All right, let us go to our last story of the day, and it's called supply chain woes. So I talked a little bit about the possibility of a strike at some of our Western ports. Well, that strike started yesterday. So we've got 7,400 workers on strike. This is going to cause some issues because that is a major port when it comes to the supply chain. So hopefully this strike is very short, because right now, this is not the thing that we want to see. This is not the thing that's going to help inflation. This is going to cause a lot of pain. And here's the thing. I think even the friggin' Oracle last week was mentioning that you got ships coming over with food that you can't even unload. So some of that food's going to start rotting. It's just not a good scene. They need to get that strike under control as soon as possible. So hopefully next week we have some good news on that one. All right. Now, what is absolutely going on next week? Let's do that. We'll just get back to his. Okay, so next week we have in Canada on Friday, we've got the jobs data coming out. So that'll be the last big data point that they're going to use before the rate hike announcement the following week, because our rate hike is on the 12th. That's when that's when the Bank of Canada will announce that, probably a 25 basis point increase. Down in the U.S., not a lot going on. So the U.S. has a shortened market tomorrow, so they're only open for a little bit. The Canadian market's closed tomorrow because that is their Canada Day. U.S. market's closed on Tuesday. Then on both Thursday and Friday, we're going to get split over 2 days. We're going to get all of the U.S. job data come in. And that, of course, will be, that'll sort of help us figure out what's going on. Now, earnings-wise this week, the only really big company that is dropping an earnings report is Aritzia, so ATZ. Now, they had a drop in the middle of that quarter, and they've been very flat since then. So I don't think we're going to see a lot. Though interesting, last week we were talking about earnings report for Alimentation Couche-Tard, and even though I wasn't super happy with what I saw, I said it could go either way, but it did go up. They did do well, so that was kind of an interesting, nice little surprise for anybody who is into Couche-Tard. So that's kind of a awesome little thing. So on the channel. Oh, look at this, guys. The kitten is actually asleep. I'll turn around so you can see her. There we are. She's asleep. So coming up this week on the channel, on Tuesday's video, we're going to look at those cash ETFs. So those are ETFs that you drop cash into, your cash positions, and you're making a little bit of a return on them. So if you haven't heard about those, you'll hear about those on Tuesday. So we're going to talk a little bit about those on Tuesday. Thursday is going to be whoever wins the vote. Right now, I think WTN is currently leading that vote. So if you haven't voted yet, go over to the community tab, take a look, and vote. So we'll have to take a look at that. All right, and typical of a tyrant, I guess. And is HISU, USA HISU ETF, and US dividend payers get withholding tax in the RRSP? All right, so if you have a US ETF and you put it into your RRSP, then there's no withholding tax because it's a US company. But if it's a Canadian company that invests in American stocks, the withholding tax does happen behind the scenes there because it's taken before it gets to the management of the dividend, and then they give you what's left. So when they report to you a dividend amount, let's say they say you get 10%, you're still getting 10%. But if you weren't paying that withholding tax, it'd probably be something like, maybe 11 or 12%, something like that. So you do lose a little tiny bit of that when you've got a Canadian company that has American, like a Canadian ETF with American companies inside of it. So that it doesn't matter where you put that, you lose that either way. What do you want to do there, kitty? All right. So, you just want a new place to lay down. Okay. There we go. Good kitty. Yeah, we know what the kitty thinks of investing. Yeah. That's it. When it's time for the kitty to go to bed, I just start giving her stock tips, and she dozes off pretty darn fast. So, but yeah, so that's what we got coming up. For those of you who are channel members, I'll be reaching out this week to see what you guys want me to do for your channel membership video for July. So we'll get some ideas from you guys, and then we'll let you vote on it, and we'll do whatever you want. Last month I did a reaction video, so that was kind of fun and different. I kind of like doing that. That was kind of neat. So, maybe in the summer when things are slowing down in finance, we could even do one on the main channel. We'll have to see, because that was kind of fun. Yeah. So as we're coming up on the end here, guys, if you guys got any last burning questions, drop them in chat very quickly here. We'll get to them. Whoa, that was a bird. Did you hear that bird? Some kind of a crowy bird went by the window, made a big crow sound, and I was just like, what is that? Here's a good question. Is it far better to invest in a parent company rather than a subsidiary? So example, CU and ATCO, right? It really depends on the way they've structured subsidiaries. Sometimes you'll have a subsidiary of a major company that is designed to actually give you more dividends. In that situation, like say split cores are actually perfect examples. Sometimes you've got one of them that is designed to provide more dividends. The other one is designed for more growth. So it doesn't necessarily, it really is case by case, Fahad. The big thing is to look at both, because they will both have their own fundamentals. A lot of times a subsidiary will run its own books, its own numbers. So you can do your fundamental analysis on that subsidiary. Because keep in mind, too, there are companies that sometimes have a subsidiary that's just not doing so well. And that might be for tax purposes, or maybe it's a situation where they're just going to hold on to it for a while until it does recover because they have longer term faith in it, or they have a bigger picture that we may not be aware of in that situation. So I would definitely say do your fundamental analysis on both. Like between ATCO and Canadian Utilities, I think I would almost lean towards Canadian Utilities, but I haven't looked at the fundamentals for ATCO in a while. So I would look at those first before I would decide if that's the way I was going to go. Hey there, you little banana bread head. Little banana bread head. There we go. So, yeah. Now, I actually have. I'll show you guys. All right. It's going to get bumpy here. So there's my window. That is, whoops, up there. That's her little perch. So she can go up on that anytime she wants to. Let's bring her back here. So a little window perch for her, and she's got tons of toys. She's a spoiled kitten. Is BCE a buy? I mean, they're blue chip, but right now, any of the telecos I've been kind of holding off on, only to see what's going to happen with when you've got Freedom now going coast to coast. I want to see if there's any kind of an effect, because if there is an effect, you might get a better buy-in price soon. So I would be, it doesn't hurt to DCA into them, but I wouldn't go all in just yet on any of our telecoms. I would wait to see what happens once the dust settles from the whole Rogers Shaw, Quebec or Freedom, that whole issue. Once that's all resolved, then take a look. If it does drop a little bit more, you might get a better entry point. But, with anything, DCA is always going to give you the win when you're DCAing over a longer period of time. All right, kitten. Have to close my door next week, maybe. Well, unless you guys like seeing the kitten come in. Otherwise, I don't mind. I can still talk with a kitten lying here on my back. So anyway, let's just take a look at this here. As they are one of the big three telecommunication companies beside TELUS and Rogers, here in Saskatchewan, we have SaskTel Crown Corp. Yeah, absolutely. No, they have Videotron in Quebec. But now we've got this Quebecor, which owns Freedom. They're now doing national plans. So it's going to be very interesting to see, because I know in Saskatchewan, if you look at the plans on the big three in Saskatchewan and Quebec, they're much more reasonably priced because they have that extra competition than, for example, Ontario and the rest of the provinces. Now that we've got this Quebecor, I'm hoping to see more competition right across the board, drag some of those prices down. And when that happens, that is going to impact the revenue of the big three. And that may drop their price a little bit. And that's why I'm thinking that there may be a better opportunity to get in. But once again, if you desperately want to get in, it's not a bad place. There may be a better place, but it's not a bad place. So once again, you could always do a DCA where maybe you spend a little now, then take a look and see if it goes down. If it does, then maybe come in and, finish off your buy at that point. Or worst case scenario, if it doesn't happen at all and it goes up, then at least you did get in at that point. That's why the whole DCA thing works. Love Circle, what a great, well-managed company. Yeah, they are great. Actually, I believe Circle is one of the companies under Alimentation Couche-Tard. There we go. The French again. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. Another great day. So once again, videos out again Tuesday. We'll look forward to seeing that for you. Be sure to vote if you haven't voted. And we'll see the rest of you guys again back here next week. We'll do it all over again. We'll have a lot of fun. Maybe the kitten will show up. Maybe she won't. I don't know. I can't control her. She's kind of got her own little agenda. All right. Until next week, guys, take care, and we'll see you guys again really soon.